Hi, welcome to KJ and Tony Move to France.
In today's video, we're sharing with you 10 truths about France that you might find helpful to know if you're planning on moving to France or if you're simply planning on traveling to France. These are 10 of many, but it would take us too long to go through all of them in one video. We've done a previous video about 10 things that we've learned about France, but these are additional tips, and we'll probably be doing a few more videos about all of these different aspects of France that you hopefully will find helpful. Like I said, should you choose to, if you're planning on moving to France, or if you're just simply planning on visiting France.
And if you're new to our channel, we're a couple that are moving to France ultimately, and we've lived in France, and we've actually lived some of the things we're going to talk about here. But we've also been asked questions about it, and we've seen research on different things. So these are 10 things that we think are important for you to know.
We're also going to be answering a couple of questions that have been recently asked by our viewers, and we're also going to be sharing some big news that we have at the end of the video, so be sure to stick around for that.
Are you going to tell me the news before you share it?
You know the news already. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go. Okay, number one. First truth about France is that there is something called Paris syndrome. And it's not something that Tony or I experienced. In fact, we didn't even learn about it until after we came back from France. And it's something that I believe was implied in that New York Post article. And that's all I'll say, is that there is a New York Post article which paints an inaccurate picture of our experience, especially in Paris. We experienced something, whatever is the complete opposite of Paris syndrome is what we experienced. But what it is basically is when you have this expectation of Paris being a certain way, whether that's glamorous and exciting, and then the person goes to Paris and they're extremely disappointed with their experience in Paris, and then they experience this Paris syndrome. And I don't want to spend too much time in this video talking about Paris syndrome. There are quite a few symptoms of Paris syndrome that are a bit disturbing and concerning. Something I think is important for people to be aware of though, so I put a link in the description where you can go ahead and check out more about this Paris syndrome.
Number two is the fact that there are a lot of homeless people in Paris, just like there are in most major cities around the world. I don't know if you go to Paris expecting that there not be any homeless people, and maybe that feeds the Paris syndrome a little bit, but there are homeless people, and expect to see them particularly around the monuments, because that's where there are a lot of tourists who are likely to drop some coins in their cups. And so the good thing is that they're not aggressive at all. They're generally sitting down with a cup, with a dog or two, and they're not unfriendly in any way.
Well, and they may try to engage you. They may say something like bonjour, or they may, and of course, you know, my pronunciation isn't the greatest, but they may try to say something in English even to you to get your attention. But they are in no way, at least we haven't experienced them being aggressive at all.
One of the things I think you're going to find in the homeless people in some areas, especially by the monuments, is they might be unique in their approach. We saw somebody with a fishing pole with a little can on the end of his pole. Things like that you may see. And if you try to take pictures of people like that because of the uniqueness, not because you're exploiting them or anything like that, please be sure to ask them if you can do it first, because you may offend them if you don't.
And also, did you find homeless people in Nice? Because this isn't just about Paris, this is about France in general. And since I wasn't with you in Nice, I can't really speak to that.
I didn't see any homeless people in Nice.
You didn't?
I did
That
not.
doesn't mean they don't exist.
Right.
And I'm sure there are homeless people all over France. Just like the US, there are homeless people more populations of homeless people in different areas, but I imagine they're all over France.
And France has a lot of refugees. So therefore they're susceptible to a lot of homeless people.
Yeah.
So, don't be surprised.
Number 3, another truth about France is that there are many French people who have a strong aversion to Parisians, who actually greatly dislike Paris. And it's similar to, if you think about the US and the way New Yorkers are viewed by some other people around the US, and I can say that because I was born and raised in New York, but there is this view of New Yorkers being a certain way. And I think that this is very similar and also very true for a lot of people, a lot of French people who view Parisians the same way. In fact, when we've been to different establishments here in the US, like French bakeries, where we've met French people who moved from France to the US, and we've told them about moving to Paris, they question us and say, why would you want to move to Paris? I mean, we have family members who have moved out of Paris. And, to each his own. We love Paris. But there are a lot of French people who don't like Paris at all.
Did we mention that we love Paris? Number 4 has to do with closet space. If you're moving to France and you have a lot of clothes with you and you expect to have the same amount of closet space that you have here, you're in for not a very good surprise. Most apartments and homes in France do not have built-in closets with sliding doors or walk-in closets or anything like that. They have pieces of furniture that are closets. So you're not going to be able to take as many clothes as you would have here. So as you make your plans to go, you could do one of 2 things. You could bring less clothes, obviously, or you could rent a place that has an extra room if you can afford to do that. Keeping in mind that if you're renting in Paris, Paris is one of the most expensive cities in the world to rent in. If you're renting in the suburbs, that's much more affordable. So less closet space. Closets are generally pieces of furniture there.
Number 5, another truth about France is that it is not a dryer culture. And this is true of, I think, other European countries as well, such as Spain. But most people historically have used the dryer racks that you'll find in most bathrooms. Sometimes there are also dryer racks in the kitchen, like we found in Versailles. It was in both the bathroom and the kitchen. And that people traditionally will use these racks, their heaters, to dry their clothes and or hang their clothes on lines, like outside their home or outside their windows, to dry their clothes. It's becoming, I think, more popular now for homes to have dryers, but it's something that you should be aware of when you're traveling in France and if you plan to move to France, that it's not common that you'll find a place with both a washer and a dryer. And also it's very common that the washer is also the dryer. They have this washer and dryer combo where the same unit is actually the washing machine and the dryer. And also you're going to find that the units are much smaller in homes than they are here.
Number 6 relates to credit cards and using your American credit cards in France. The first thing I would tell you is if you're planning on going on a foreign trip, you should let your bank know that. All right? Because if your bank has any kind of fraud alerts, they may not approve your credit card, because if they don't know that you're in France and all your previous credit card use has been in the United States, they might flag that and not let you use it. So first of all, let your bank know. Second, I would bring multiple different credit cards because you may have a problem with them. That being said, for the 4 months I was in France, I went to 3 different major cities, and in none of those did I have a problem. I also went into Italy and I didn't have a problem there, and I went to Monte Carlo and I didn't have a problem there. But we have heard about a lot of Americans having problems with their American credit cards in foreign countries. So just let your bank know.
And we recommend the Wise card, which is what we use most often when we're traveling and when we were living in Europe, because what's great about the Wise card is that in one account you can have multiple currencies that it pulls from. So let's say you're planning a trip and you know that you're going to France and to Italy and to Spain and to different countries that use different currencies, like England, for example, uses the pound. I mean, other areas use, a lot of different countries use euros.
Switzerland uses a different...
Right, but let's say you're going to different countries where there's different currencies. You can designate different amounts to different, let's just say, jars within your account, and it will naturally pull from whatever currency you're using in that particular country. And we've been really happy with the way that the Wise card works. So there's a link in the description if you're interested in learning more about that. Moving on to number 7, another truth about France is that it is not a culture where people will traditionally hug each other when they're meeting. So traditionally here in the US, when you see someone that you haven't seen in a while or you're welcoming someone, we often will hug that person. We may even hug and kiss the person on the cheek, but in France, there's typically not any hugging involved. It's the dual kiss, the kiss on each cheek.
Number 8. Number 8 has to do with driving privileges in France. You can drive on an American license for a year. If you stay longer than a year, you need to get either a French license or an international license. I got an international license. I didn't have to go anywhere. It was all done on the internet. We're going to put a link in the description as to how to do that. And it's a safe bet if you're renting a car to be able to do that easily, to have an international license. I rented a car to drive from Versailles to Nice, and I had no problem at all. And they didn't even ask me for my international license. I just had my American license. That's particularly easy if you use American rental services, and they're all there. If you want Hertz or Avis or any of the ones that we know of, they're all there. So they recognize an American driver's license, or you can get an international driver's license.
Number 9, another truth about France is relative to eating with a knife and a fork. So if you've watched our previous video relative to 10 things that we've learned about France in our travels and in living in France for the period of time that we did, is that they don't typically switch hands when they're cutting their food. They keep their knife and their fork in the same hand. We traditionally in the US will cut our food and then switch the fork. Another tradition, I guess you would call it, relative to the knife and fork is that they cut up all of their food. So for example, food like pizza and burgers that we as Americans will traditionally use our hands to pick up and eat the pizza or to pick up the burger and eat the burger, the French will not do that. The French will use a knife and a fork to cut up virtually most things. So that's just something that you also may want to be aware of relative to dining etiquette. And then number 10 is another piece of information relative to dining etiquette, and in particular, eating out in restaurants. Tony?
Number 10 has to do with primarily tipping. We're used to, in the United States, generally tipping 15 to 20%. In France, the servers are paid a living wage. So tipping truly is extra. So generally people round up as part of the tip, or they leave a couple of euros, coins. They generally will not tip the 15 to 20%. If you have outstanding service, you can tip more. But I had the experience that when I tipped, I don't remember the exact percentage, but let's call it 18%, the server actually tried to stop me because he thought I was tipping too much. which I thought was kind of neat that he would educate me in not an aggressive way, that in France we don't do that. But also another quirk about France that you really do need to know. It's not about being aloof. Good service in a restaurant in France means they take your order and then the meal comes and then they leave you alone. You do not get bothered during a meal in France. In this country, we expect the waiter to come back and say, perhaps,
would you like something more to drink, or would you? Yeah.
Sure, and they might ask you if the meal is good. In France, they don't do that. And again, it's not aloofness, it's just the way it's done there. So I know for me, when that first happened, I felt good about it because I wasn't constantly being interrupted. So it was a pleasant surprise.
So those are the 10 truths about France for this particular video. We have more that are coming in future videos. And now we're going to move on and answer a couple of questions that have been recently posed to us by some of our viewers. Okay, question number 1 is from a viewer named Terry. And the question is, what are the top 3 things we would do differently?
Well, number 1's easy for me. I'd stay in France, either in Paris or Nice or both of them. They were wonderful. And so it's not that the United States is bad or I'm un-American. I'm not. But I loved Paris and I loved Nice. And it's what I wanted to do, and I would stay.
Do you think maybe that would be translated to like stay in one place for a year rather than traveling around? Because there's also a viewer who has shared that that's what they're planning to do. They're staying for a year, and then they're evaluating from there. Do you think that would be
I could have stayed a year in Paris. I could have stayed a year in Nice. I could have stayed a year in one of those two, and it's a very short flight to go from one to the other and very inexpensive, and it's a 4-hour train ride on the high-speed train. So, one of the thoughts was to spend 10 months in Paris and 2 months in Nice, or the other way around. And if you want to go for the weekend, go for the weekend.
Well, I just think that for me, the moving around constantly was very unsettling. I think that it created much more homesickness than maybe I would have experienced if we weren't moving around so much. So that's pretty much a different something that I think we would do differently.
Sure.
Had we, we are doing it again.
Yeah.
So we are doing it that way. And we are doing it that way. We're choosing where we're going to move to before we move. So we're doing what we call scouting trips, where we are going and scouting locations.
And you could easily argue that our 3 trips to Paris, we've pretty much scouted Paris.
Yeah.
My trip to Nice, I've scouted Nice. We're both going back to Nice in 3 or 4 weeks, and KJ's going to see if what I saw in Nice, she sees in Nice, and then we'll go from there.
And then finally, the last thing would be learning more of the language beforehand. Like, we're taking French classes now, and will be continuing to take French classes between now and when we do make our permanent move there. So if you're planning on moving to France, we've said this before, definitely do what you can to learn as much of the language as you can, because that will really be helpful.
Sure. And so let's just tell the viewers the 3 things in short.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. I would stay in France. Number 2 is that we would scout out the areas before we move there.
Which is what we're doing.
And number 3 is learn the language before you go. All 3 of those things are important, we believe, before you go.
Okay, next question, and then we're going to move on to share our big news with you after this next and final question. And this is sort of a 2-part question, and it's from our viewer named Debbie. And Debbie asks, where is your favorite place in the world and what are you doing? And I think she means, what are you doing, like, in your favorite place in the world. That's the way I interpret it. So whereas I think your favorite place is the same as my favorite place.
Well,
I don't know.
you know, my favorite place in the world, if we're talking about a city, would be Paris. But if you're talking about a place in Paris, it would be standing on one of the bridges, preferably right in front of Notre Dame, over the River Seine, and that would be my favorite place. So what am I doing? I'm just taking it all in. Just taking in the multicultural people that are there at all hours of the night, and you know, just drinking it in, seeing the Eiffel Tower in one direction and Notre Dame in the other direction, actually right there.
And we didn't compare notes before I asked, right?
Right.
I can confirm. I didn't even tell you what the question was, and I can tell you that it's nearly the same. For me, it's absolutely 100% Paris. Love Paris. I have what I would call the love for Paris bug as opposed to the Paris syndrome. I have the love bug for Paris, and I would be somewhere on the Seine. I would be sitting along the Seine or on a boat on the Seine itself, and just like Tony said, taking it all in. It's just so incredibly beautiful.
How about standing on Pont Neuf, where
Neuf.
in front of you is the Eiffel Tower, to the right of you is all of the stores that are owned by the richest man in the world, and I can never say the name of the Samaritain is the big store there, which is a multi-billion-dollar.
And it's not Tain. You're definitely saying.
Okay.
We're learning French, so we're learning how to pronounce things.
Anyway, it's an incredible store. If you love shopping, and especially for high-end things, you love it. That's right there, and you're on the Seine.
So those are the questions. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, please leave them in the comments. Let us know, and we will answer those questions in our next video. And the
Can I just say one more place I love?
Well, yeah.
Because I've never even said this out loud, how much I loved it. We were walking down the Champs-Élysées with Pierce a couple of days before Christmas, when it was getting dark and the Christmas lights went up. And it was really kind of magical. And the Champs-Élysées is almost as magical as the Seine. So I love that too. Maybe that's why Paris is so perfect for us, because I could name 3 or 4 other places in Paris that would be also almost equal to the Seine and Notre Dame. But you know, the question was which one.
Well, the question was, what are you doing? So I think it's safe to say that no matter what we're doing, as long as we're in Paris,
sure,
it's our favorite place to be.
I used to love just walking the streets.
Yeah.
I used to go out. You may remember this. I used to say, I'm just going to go get lost. And I'd go get lost, and that's how we found Luxembourg Gardens.
Yeah.
Right? That became one of our favorite places.
Yeah.
And I think when we go next time, we're staying there, right?
We're staying right near the garden. So are you ready for the big news?
I'm ready.
All right. Do you want to share it, or do you want me to
Why
share
don't
it?
you share it? You're better.
Okay.
You found the place.
I did find the place. So we're moving. The big news is, I know that we've only been here a couple of months, but there have been a variety of circumstances that have led, none of which are horrible or anything like that, but have just sort of come together in a way where we decided it was a better move for us to go ahead and look for a home in Vero Beach, which is where my parents live and what we were intending to do ultimately anyway as a home base. And I found the perfect house in Vero Beach, and we are slated to move in July 15th. We get back from Nice, I think the 12th or the 13th.
Right.
But what's great is we have this place until August 1st, so we have a nice cushion of like 2 weeks to be able to move from here to there. And we'll be sharing our new home with you down the road once we move in. But we're really, really excited about being close to my parents, only 10 minutes away.
This way,
it'd be great.
They're travelers themselves.
They are.
And they have a cat that I love. And we're cat people.
Yeah.
And so we watch their cat when they go away, and this way it'll be very easy for us to do that.
And Piers is going to be living with us. He's coming home from graduate school in a week, and he's going to be finishing his master's, his thesis at home, and being 10 minutes from my parents as opposed to 2 hours, he's going to get an opportunity to spend more time with my parents, which is just going to be wonderful for both him and my parents. So that's it. That's the big news, and we hope that you found the information in this video, the 10 truths about France, to be helpful or beneficial for you in some way, shape, or form. And we thank you so much for watching until the end.
And if you like this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
And be sure to click the bell after you click subscribe, because by clicking the bell, you will then be alerted to all of our videos, new videos, once they are posted. Thanks again for joining us today. A biento.
A biento.